Hey, welcome back to Green is Good. Today, we're so thankful to have Ed Ring on. He's the Green Tech and Politics editor for AlwaysOn Media. And, you know, he's been doing the green thing way before it was cool. He founded EcoWorld.com back in 1995, which reported on clean technology and the whole environmental ecosystems and stuff. And so he now is in charge of AlwaysOn Media and Outreach. And, Ed, thank you for joining Mike and I today on Green is Good. We're so excited to have you so you could explain to our listeners we want to inspire the entrepreneurs out there and also the business community that if this green revolution has just gotten underway, we're only in the top of the first inning and there's so much more to do and everyone could be part of it. So Ed, thanks for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me. You're welcome.
And, you know, Ed, Mike and I were so excited. We read the background on your upcoming great conferences, but your September 15th to 17th one in San Francisco and the October 19th to 21st one in Washington, the Entrepreneurs March on Washington. Why don't we start by telling us explain the overview on these two conferences and why they're so important, and then we'll get more in depth about who's coming and who should come.
Sure. The conference in September, it's September 14th, 15th, and 16th.
Okay.
And that's our Going Green conference. It's the fourth one that we've done. We did one in Boston in March, and then we've had two in Northern California in September, one in September of 2008 and one in 2007. This one now is probably the best one ever. We really are really happy with all of them, but they just seem to get better and better.
And who started this, and why did it start, and what's the evolution look like? Give us a little history on AlwaysOn and your great conferences.
Oh, you bet. AlwaysOn is founded by Tony Perkins, who also founded in the 90s the magazine The Red Herring.
Ah, yeah.
Which is that's a well-known publication.
Sure.
And, in fact, I'll talk to people, you know, calling from overseas, and they won't have heard of AlwaysOn yet, and I'll go, well, have you heard of The Red Herring? And they always seem to say yes, but that publication, as part of their business, pioneered the entrepreneur meets investor conference. So what AlwaysOn started to do when Tony started that company about 7 years ago was carry on that tradition of bringing together entrepreneurs and investors in high tech. And right now they have, 8 conferences that explore a variety of places where high technology intersects with various industry sectors. So they have one called On Hollywood that looks at technology and how it's impacting entertainment. They have one called On Media that looks at how technology is impacting media. And obviously the impact has been very profound. I remember back in the 90s, Tony would talk about doing a conference or a publication on technology and entertainment, and people would look at him funny, and nobody's, of course, doing that now. It's technology just continues to, high-tech, information technology just continues to proliferate into all of these sectors. With the Going Green conferences, we started those a little later, and that's when I got involved to help program those. We looking, of course, at how high technology and information technology is rolling into clean tech, which is kind of misleading because clean tech is everything. Clean tech is every industry on Earth. So it's not really a sector as more of a sector of sectors. And so that gives us a pretty big canvas to work with when we're programming our events. It's very exciting. The On DC event is looking at the intersection of technology and government, particularly, really for a couple of reasons. Technology is starting to drive certain industry sectors more than ever. Cybersecurity, healthcare, broadband, renewable energy, education. These are all areas where the government's really, really involved, and involved now more than ever. So at the same time as technology is impacting these sectors that are typically heavily regulated government involvement in these sectors, we're also seeing the government starting to write a lot more regulations and issuing a lot more funding for these sectors. So it seemed like the time was ripe to do a new conference where we look at, the intersection of technology and entrepreneurship and sectors where the government's heavily involved, and that's what On DC is about.
Got it. So let's talk about then the first one that's upcoming, where green tech and green technologies and the green revolution meets money, because to fund these great new concepts or these nascent businesses, of course they need money to grow these visions. So tell us from the 14th to the 16th, what's happening in San Francisco? Who's coming? First of all, who's some of the great speakers you have, and then tell us some of the great VCs that you have, and then we'll talk about some of the companies that are going to be there.
Sure. The speakers, for the most part, are either from companies or from the investor community, and we've got quite a lineup. We have well over 100 individuals presenting. We have panels, and we also have individual CEO presentations, and we have several featured keynote speakers. So some of the luminaries would include R. James Woolsey, who's now a venture partner with Vantage Point, one of the larger clean tech venture firms in the world, but he used to be the head of the CIA, and he's also an energy expert. He's an expert on energy security and energy independence, and did several reports for the second Bush administration, actually late in 2008. So he's, in very recent years, he's been very involved in that area. He's delivering a keynote. We're also, we have Vinod Khosla, who's a well-known venture capitalist, Khosla Ventures. He's one of the original founders of Sun Microsystems, and he's also, in recent years, one of the original clean tech investors.
Right.
He's doing a keynote. We've got Lee McIntyre, who's the CEO of CH2M Hill, which it's not as well known as some of the other big civil engineering firms, but they actually are one of the biggest. They've got over 30,000 employees around the world, and they build cities, So when you think about civil engineering and clean tech, it's like a giant systems integration challenge. They take every clean technology out there and put it all together. So his remarks should be really interesting. We've got, in terms of keynotes, we're also bringing in John Woolard, who's the CEO of Bright Source Energy, who was also our winner in our Going Green 100 top 100 private clean technology companies for this year. We like Bright Source Energy because they probably have the most cost-effective way to generate electricity using a renewable technology out there today, and they're ready to start literally putting gigawatts of generation capacity on the ground in California and other sunny places.
So you're covering everything from solar to waste management to green automobiles. Every sector of the green revolution is being covered at your conference?
That's what we try to do. That's completely impossible, but we do our best.
And so then you have the CEOs from some of the better companies speaking, and then you have also some of the money people speaking. So where does our listeners fit in? Who should be coming to your conference, and how do they access and get inspired by or get their deals funded by what you're trying to accomplish?
Well, a lot of people who are interested in getting deals funded actually participate in our CEO showcases, where they get 6 minutes to present exactly what their business is, and that tends to distill the presentations pretty effectively. We also have a lot of CEOs that are on panels. We have panels that are oriented to everything from water to biochemicals to agriculture and aquaculture. So we have a solar panel. We have a renewable energy panel, for the general renewable energy. We have an incredible auto panel. I want to talk about that some more, but I think that to answer your question, if you want to go somewhere and find out and have a chance to meet really some of the biggest, most knowledgeable people in terms of both investing in clean technology, but also in terms of developing clean technologies, this might be the best place out there. We're really happy with the group we've assembled this year.
Well, perfect, Ed. We're gonna go to commercial now and pay the bills here. And on the, we want everyone to come on back because Ed Ring is going to talk more about what's happening at the Always On Going Green conference up in San Francisco, and then we're going to talk about entrepreneurship and politics and what they're doing in Washington on October 19th to the 21st. Come on back to the other side of Green is Good.
If a little green is good, more is even better. Now, back to Green is Good with John Shigarian and Mike Brady.
Welcome back to Green is Good. Mike and I are so excited to have Ed Ring on with us today, who's the Green Tech and Politics editor for Always On Media, and he's the voice of Always On. Always On is doing great things. They have 2 conferences coming up that all the entrepreneurs out there, or aspiring entrepreneurs, or current green CEOs who need access to capital. September 14th through 16th in San Francisco. Always On has a great conference coming up, and all the other entrepreneurs who are doing green tech or clean tech ventures that intersect with politics. The Entrepreneurs March in Washington, October 19th to 21st. These are 2 great events. And Ed, thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you.
So let's talk about, so you have people coming to, you're trying to match up aspiring entrepreneurs or current entrepreneurs in the green sector at the Going Green 2009 in San Francisco with great venture capitalists. Is that pretty much in sum what we're talking about here? You're matching up great money sources with great entrepreneurs?
That's pretty much the formula. That's exactly right.
So tell us some of the great names that are going to be coming up there. Give us some, who should be coming first of all? Who do you want to be coming to this? How many people are coming to your Going Green 2009? And is it really someone who already has a business started, or do they have a business plan and they want to go meet some of the great money sources that exist out there?
Well, we had 700 people last year, and it was a little full. We're going to probably try for about 600 this year. That's probably where it's going to end up. And I think anybody who's really serious and ready to raise money for a startup company or to get into a Series A or Series B round for a private equity company,
right?
They probably should be here. We have just tremendous companies at all stages, pre-IPO stages. And some of our winners in our Going Green 100 clean tech competition, for example, some of our category winners can give you an idea of the quality and the breakthrough potential of these companies. We have, for example, in energy storage systems, the winner is from Colorado, Porous Power Technologies. They have ultra-thin lithium batteries, extremely high-density batteries that are able to wrap around surfaces, so they can wrap around whatever appliance or a building, at various scales that they're used to store energy for. We have a company, Solar Energy. The big winner, of course, is a solar thermal company, Bright Source. But in the category, Heliovolt from Texas has got similarly to Porous Power, they've got a photovoltaic material that wraps around buildings like skin. And when you see these two together, you can just imagine that one of the problems with photovoltaic is the sun goes down, and we have the storage challenge. This could literally, you could integrate those two technologies and have a skin on a building that's the photovoltaics on the top and the ultra-thin, high-density storage batteries right underneath, and it could take care of, in one module, the biggest challenge with intermittent renewables, which is they're only out there while the sun's shining or the wind is blowing. We have a company in green materials, Calera, that has a formula that they're now prototyping to make cement out of seawater, out of salt water. They use the salt and the minerals in the salt water as the building blocks for cement, and at the same time, the water, the wastewater that comes out of that process is fresh water that's pre-treated and ready for desalination. So there's just, and it goes on and on. I mean, we've got a company called Ytricity that's got a way to wirelessly transmit electricity to appliances or even to vehicles, where if you're stopped at a stoplight and they have a Ytricity technology under the pavement, you could have your car is going to have wireless communications. It's going to have a fiduciary automatically built into the car that will negotiate with the the wireless electricity charging suite that's under the pavement at the stoplight and will opt, per parameters that the driver or the car owner sets, to recharge your car while you're waiting at a stoplight using this wireless technology.
Unbelievable. So really, wait a second now, Ed. This is really, really, for guys like Mike and I who are just sitting here totally blown away, this is really a window into the future of what we're all going to be living in and the technologies that we're going to be enjoying in years to come.
Well, I think you're right, and I think another thing about looking at all of these companies and all of these ideas is there's such a diversity of solutions that are being brought forward. There's a lot of these concepts that aren't going to necessarily turn out to be commercially successful, but there's this torrent of alternatives and innovations that people are coming up with all over the country, all over the world. And when you look at all of these companies that have all of these different ideas to create abundant resources and to make resources better, faster, cheaper, and also cleaner, you can't help but be very optimistic about the future, because the innovation, the power of individual inventors and entrepreneurs coming up with solutions for people is just limitless. And so, maybe not any one of those three companies I mentioned are going to be successful, but there's 3 million, companies out there that are all coming up with stuff. And so we try to find the best, and one of the ways to do that, of course, is we have strong relationships with top venture capital firms who, that's all they do. They fly around the world all the time looking for entrepreneurs and inventors that are coming up with ideas with extraordinary promise. And so that's where we found these people.
Gotcha. So money marrying with great entrepreneurs is what you're doing in San Francisco. So let's talk a little bit about what the Entrepreneurs March on Washington looks like, October 19th to the 21st. We know money is very important to making an entrepreneur's vision become a reality and a business venture successful. But as you said earlier, Ed, politics is also very important. Why don't you give our listeners a little overview about what's going on in Washington?
Well, right now, the way the administration has been pouring, as they say, trillions of dollars, we actually have a panel called Tapping the Trillions, into the economy. And when you look at that phenomena, and you also look at the climate bill, which is really two things. It's a cap and trade, potentially a cap-and-trade regime that could go into effect. And it's also an energy security and renewable energy funding bill. So there's a lot to that bill. And then you look at the health care reform bill, there's a lot to that bill. So we identified some sectors that are particularly, in fact, I think they're actually spelled out in the stimulus plan as areas where the government is going to get more involved in funding, and that would be health care, broadband, cybersecurity, and then renewables and energy security. So we took those 4 areas and we designed a program around those and also some of the more general issues. And really there's two big things happening in Washington that are kind of new, or certainly the scale of these initiatives is new. One is the funding, of course, which is unprecedented. But the other is there's a lot of new regulations and legislation that's very transformative, that's either being enacted or is being discussed right now in Washington. And these kinds of initiatives and legislation and this level of funding is impacting companies, particularly in those 4 sectors, at the same time as high tech is starting to transform those sectors more and more. I mean, cybersecurity by definition is a high tech sector, so is broadband, and those are sectors that are extremely influenced by disruptive innovation and by entrepreneurs bringing new technologies and solutions all the time. Healthcare and energy, of course, were not necessarily technology-driven or as technology-driven in decades in the past as they are in the last few years. So in all of these cases, we've got entrepreneurs coming up with all kinds of ways to make things better and to bring new products to market, and they're like colliding. They're on a collision course with all this stuff coming out of Washington, both the money and the legislation. And nobody's really got their arms around it, and we're not going to claim that we'll have it all figured out after this event, but we're trying to bring in not only our typical mix of entrepreneurs and investors, but also people that are involved in policy in Washington who really know how this might turn out. And we're putting them all together to talk about it.
No, it's unbelievably inspiring. I'm looking at the program here, and obviously Tony Perkins and your organization, Always On, is...
Well, that's Tony's. Tony's the founder of Always On.
Right, and you guys have seen the future because you've seen the big... and you understand the paradigm shift in Washington and of political will now is focusing right in your sweet spot. So I'm looking at some of these topics here that you're going to be covering, which is, like you said, climate change legislation and the young guns visions for America's future. We know it doesn't matter anymore. You don't have to be 30 to start a new business. Both from Bill Gates to Mark Zuckerberg, and everybody in between. That's been proven over and over again.
Yeah, you can be 17.
Yeah, you could be 17. You could be a 22-year-old billionaire in this. So we know that. But some of the other, government innovation and technology transfer, and how much government. These are some of. And the ongoing digital transformation of healthcare. We know the one of the biggest challenges, but also one of the biggest opportunities is the digital transfer of all of our health records between doctors, so we don't have to lug things around or beg for our records anymore. So there's a lot of unbelievably relevant discussion panels and topics that you're going to be covering in Washington, D.C. So, that looks like it's going to be a great conference. And do you have already your keynotes or any of the big speakers already lined up that you could talk about?
Well, it's getting a lot of momentum right now, and we find this occurs with Going Green, and at least to date, of course, it's occurring with On D.C., is politicians, just like venture capitalists, tend to take the whole month of August off. So we actually do have some great speakers that I'll tell you about, but I expect we're going to be getting a whole bunch more. For example, we've got Richard Russell, who's the Deputy Director of National Intelligence for Enterprise Solutions at the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. We've got two Air Force generals, one of whom is an absolutely terrific venture capital firm that he's one of the principals at now, Paladin Capital. That's Ken Minahan. We've got some heavyweight venture capitalists already signed up: Dixon Dahl from Dahl Capital Management, Tim Draper from Draper Fisher Jurvetson, Art Marks from Valhalla Partners, John Backus from New Atlantic Ventures, and there's several of those guys. We've got Mark Heeson, the president of the National Venture Capital Association. We've got Tom Gillespie, a senior director with InQtel, which is the CIA's venture fund. We've got Errol Arkalik, who's a program director for innovation research and small business technology transfer at the National Science Foundation. And we've got a couple of noteworthy journalists already signed up. We've got Tucker Carlson, who's editor of the Daily Caller, fairly well-known guy.
Yeah.
We also got Blair Levin, who's he was the head of the FCC. He's been brought back by the FCC to be the coordinator of the National Broadband Plan. So we've already got a nice, and that's about half of the people we've lined up. We've got not quite 30 people that are either confirmed or near confirmed, and of course we've got invites out to about triple that. We're very confident that we're going to get a hell of a lineup. People really getting excited about it.
Again, yeah, and we only have a minute or so left, and I want to make sure all of our listeners understand that they could come to both of your amazing events that are coming up. The Going Green event up in San Francisco, September 14th to the 16th, or October 19th to the 21st in Washington. And if they buy their tickets now for the Washington event, I think, what's the discount?
It's a 50% discount, but these are expensive tickets. With the discount,
right,
it's $1,250.
Well, it sounds like it's well worth it because it can get their venture or their dream or their vision funded, and also they can meet the right people to help their venture succeed. And let me just give a contact information here. If you want to come to these events or get buy a ticket, you could go to John. You can email John, John, at AlwaysOn-network.com. John at AlwaysOn-network.com, or you could call him at 310-721-9451, 310-721-9451. 51. Ed, any pearls of wisdom as we got to go here?
Well, I just think it's a real privilege to be involved with these kind of events, and I think if I was serious about finding out what's really going on and getting funding for my company, I would go to one of these events. I'm just lucky I get to help organize them, so I get to go in that contest.
Well, Mike and I are just lucky to have great people like you on, Ed Ring, and Ed, your organization, Always On Media, and what you're doing. You're not only talking the talk, but you're obviously walking the walk. And it's Ed Ring, it's people like you that make Green is Good.